There is a magical operation of maximum importance. The initiation of a new aeon. When it becomes necessary to utter a word, the whole planet must be bathed in blood.
Ah, the Legacy of Kain series. This series hasn't had a new entry for nearly 2 decades, but yet people still like to talk about it. I still love this series for what it did. It really pushed the boundary between storytelling and gameplay, but Legacy of Kain has had its fair share of troubled history getting made. There are a total of 10 games that were cancelled for the series, but that's a story for another time. The original game, Blood Omen, was originally titled The Pillars of Nosgoth. Blood Omen was developed primarily by Silicon Knights, and what happened to them is a story in and of itself. But not here. It was published by Crystal Dynamics, and what happened between these two companies is quite remarkable. Here are some highlights that I've taken from the Making of Kain development page that has been archived. Kain was conceived to be a game which adults would want to play. The character Kain was modeled in part after Clint Eastwood's character in the movie Unforgiven. In this movie, there were no good or evil characters, they were all gray. The vision of Kain was to create a game where the player was put in a position where everyone believes you are evil, perhaps even yourself. We wanted to ask the questions of, what is evil? Perhaps it is merely a perspective. We wanted to create an anti-hero. Other inspirations were the Necroscope series by Brian Lumley because of the great visceral nature, and the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan because of its rich world and finely woven storylines. At E3 1995, Kain was shown off and it started to generate a bit of buzz. There was a version planned for the Sega Saturn, but instead the game was released for the Sony Playstation. The game was definitely getting some buzz. This was basically Silicon Knights' dream game. This was a passion project for them. They even had the credit screen added to the beginning of the game. This was a first for developers and one that they hoped would set a standard. Looking at it, it's truly astounding that Crystal Dynamics would give Silicon Knights the funding, the extra employees, and all the assets that they needed to create this game. Silicon Knights had no proven hits, so this was quite a gamble. And did it pay off? Well, the answer to that is definitely yes. The opening FMV really sucks you in. The world building of Legacy of Kain is fantastic. You're treated to a vampire attacking a group of humans who we later come to know as Vordor, while they scream helplessly for Malik to save them.
Call your dogs! They can feast on your corpses!
He arrives too late, and as punishment for his failure to save the circle, his soul is fused to his armor. That's a fate worse than death. You see, what has happened that has set everything into motion? An unknown assassin killed Ariel, the guardian of balance, and Nutraptor, in his grief, corrupted the circle, and the pillars of Nosgoth have fallen into decline. But it was then that we meet a young nobleman named Kain who is refused entry into a tavern. When Kain leaves, he is ambushed by assassins and murdered in cold blood. But Kain gets a second chance. The necromancer Mortanius resurrects Kain as a vampire and offers him the chance for revenge. Kain accepts and immediately kills his assassins, thus freeing up the rest of the plot brilliantly. What you think is a simple revenge story now becomes a story about Kain ending his curse, but as time goes on, will he continue to think of it as a curse? Well, let's talk about the characters and lore of Legacy of Kain, going off this game because several of these aspects would come to be important in later games. The Pillars of Nosgoth serve as the centerpiece of the land and it looks magnificent. The pillars represent the forces that preserve Nosgoth, but with Ariel's death all 9 pillars are corrupted, and thus the circle is hardly well. So for new guardians to be born, the circle must die so the pillars can be restored.
The pillars of Nosgoth. Even in life, few sights have moved me such as this. I marvel that such beauty should grace our dying world.
Now let's talk about our leading man. Kain is one of the most compelling protagonists in video game history. Kain has far more personality than many video game leads, all brought to life by Simon Templeman's great performance.
Out of my way, peasant. The stench of the fields hangs over you like a pall.
The king sees no one. He is in mourning for the princess.
He'll be in mourning for his kingdom soon, and he'll mourn for you even sooner if you don't get out of my way.
Ooh.
The thing about Kain is, you would say in any other story he'd be the villain. But in Legacy of Kain, evil is a matter of perspective. For example, Kain takes great delight in the carnage he slews. He's pompous, arrogant, and sadistic, but upholds honesty and integrity. For example, when visiting Nutraptor's retreat, Kain can come across a chained-up slave girl who the game gives you the choice to either end her suffering or leave her to suffer.
Nutraptor cared for nothing now, save his pathetic self-pity. Scars such as hers would never heal. Death would only be a mercy.
Mortanius, the Guardian of Death, is the one who sets the plot into motion. He's very likely the only one in the circle who still has some sanity and dignity left. He's the one who resurrected Kain as a vampire, thus setting him loose as Nosgoth's Avenger and Redeemer. He acts as a bit of a mentor to Kain, guiding him along through narration, though he knows that eventually he too must fall to Kain's hand. Of course, the fact that he's voiced by the late, great Tony Jade needs no introduction. Ariel is the former Guardian of Balance. She mainly serves as exposition and someone who guides Kain where to go next. You see, after her murder, she didn't move on to the next realm. Her spirit became bound to the pillars, unable to move on until Kain completes his task.
I seek only a cure.
There is no cure for death, only release. You must destroy the sorcery that is now poisoning Nosgoth. Only then will you realize peace. The 9 of the Protectors of Hope were sworn to use their powers to preserve our world. Now these pillars have been corrupted by a traitor.
Except she kinda leaves out that Kain has to be destroyed for his curse to end. Half of her face retains the beauty she had in life, while the other half is a skull. Perhaps appropriate to reflect the duality she's playing. She's played by Anna Gunn, who would later go on to play Skylar on Breaking Bad. Good for her. Nutraptor is the one who started the whole mess. He was once a kind and empathetic sage, but when he discovered Ariel's corpse, something inside him snapped and he corrupted the circle. Mourning the man she once knew, Ariel sends Kain to kill him first, so that he can put him out of his misery. Nutraptor is brought to life by Richard Doyle, who really gives him a tortured voice. Kain describes him pretty well.
So, this was the mentalist Nutraptor, this broken, pathetic little man. Yet crippled as he was, he would not yield without battle. Very well, old fool. If it is death you seek, I will not deny you.
Malik the Paladin, the Guardian of Comfort who was seen in the opening as I described his fate due to his failure to protect the Circle, Kain tries to fight him after Nutraptor, but in story and gameplay he finds he is no match and must seek outside help to kill Malik. This bears some resentment towards Malik that would come into play in later games. He's brought to life by Neil Ross, who really brings up the ham.
Never. I'll hack you from crotch to gizzard and feed what's left to your brides.
Mobius the Time Streamer, he goes on to be a very important villain in the series. Here he disguises himself as the Oracle of Time, seemingly guiding Kain to where he must go. Even in this game, there are hints that there is more to Mobius than it appears, as he shows up in multiple time periods. Richard Doyle brings Mobius to life, and he really highlights his smug, snake, scheming side. Vorador is a mirror to Kain. He has embraced his vampirism, but warns Kain not to meddle with human affairs lest there be retaliation. He's depicted as being far more evil and depraved than later games in the series would. His slaughter of the Circle is what sets the plot into motion. He's voiced by the late Paul Lucafor. Vorador gets some of the best lines in the game next to Kain.
Whelp, as if you knew what eternity was. Grovel before your true master.
Kain sees Vorador as what he will become if he lets his curse consume him. He begins to find this intriguing. Maybe in a way, Vorador is correct. There's also another plot with the legions of the Nemesis. Once a kind and just king, William, he was manipulated by Mobius into becoming a tyrant. Kain manages to get King Otmar to battle the armies of the Nemesis by rescuing his daughter from the Dollmaker, who I don't even want to think about. But upon seeing the battle go poorly, Kain goes back in time and manages to kill William before he can become the Nemesis. But of course, in doing so, he causes vampires to be persecuted and hunted in the present day because, whoops, a vampire killed a noble and just king in cold blood. Kain even finds the barbarism rather hypocritical because at least he admits what he does. They are no better.
We are free of this unholy scourge!
yet, my friend. Would you be free of the plague if only one city was cleansed? No! Would you spare one wolf in the pack that has devastated your herd? No! Then let us destroy them all! Yes! He is the last! Destroy him!
One thing that I don't think was ever touched upon was a second Kain shows up to fight Kain. How does that work? But it's rather satisfying to see Kain kill Mobius when you learn of everything he's set to do.
Ironic. By going back in time and altering the past, you turned William the Just into the Nemesis.
Aye, you have seen my plan, vampire, as I've seen your destiny. The future says you die.
But I am dead. As are you.
So as you can see, I love this story, I love its setting, I love the characters, I love the world building. It really brings the game to life. Storytelling in games was gradually beginning to step out beyond go save the princess or go stop this bad guy. This was the beginning of complex plots in console games and showed that games could tell compelling stories. Granted, this game wasn't the first to do it, but it marked a transition, I feel. But we will come back to the story at the end. For now, let's cover the rest. The graphics in the FMVs are mind-blowing for their time. Primitive by today's standards, to be sure, but still, the game definitely gets away with some graphic blood that I think I can get away with because it's pretty obviously tame by today. What really sets this game apart, what really elevates this game, is the strength of its voice acting. The game only has 6 voice actors: Simon Templeman, Tony Jay, Anna Gunn, Richard Doyle, Neil Ross, and Paul Lucifer. You see, excellent voice acting wasn't a standard back when this game was made, it was more of a luxury. You often got games that sounded like this.
Mega Man, today we finish this!
Hey, Zach! Why must I fight you? We are not enemies!
Shut up!
But it really shows what having excellent voice acting can do for your game. The gameplay of Blood Omen is a top-down adventure akin to The Legend of Zelda. Kain walks with a D-pad. I'm not used to the PS1 controller not having an analog stick. Kain swings his sword with the square button. As Kain is a vampire, Kain must suck blood to regain health. You do that with the circle button. Typically, whenever someone attacks you, you attack back. When they stagger, you suck their blood. But then you come across a random guy and you slit his throat. But he didn't fight back. Then you enter a village and you realize that you just killed an innocent man in cold blood. Oof. Yes, Blood Omen has towns for you to visit. The people in them are really stupid. You'd think with a vampire entering the town they'd run like hell and lock their doors. But instead, the one woman NPC will try to slap you. Are you seriously stupid, lady? So yeah, this raises the interesting question. At times when you are low on health, you have to slaughter innocent people just to survive. Is that morally right? Of course not. But then again, I do question the intelligence of these people. So what I like to do, I only kill innocents if I'm low on blood and need massive refills. Otherwise, I generally go about my way. Although if they try to attack me, I will defend myself. In the dungeons, aside from your typical puzzles, you must also contend with obstacles that can hurt you, and you are forced to suck the blood from chained up humans. Although doing that isn't so bad. The female prisoners are quiet, but the male prisoners just go... It just makes me want to kill them faster. Not that you have the option to free them, but the sooner I didn't have to listen to that, all the better. The weapons of Blood Omen don't work like they do in Zelda. In Zelda, it's usually you have a sword, a good sword, and a best sword. The armor works the same way. There's Green Link as the default, Blue Link is better, Red Link is the best. Blood Omen takes the approach that there are multiple weapons for you to use. The Iron Sword, which is the starting weapon, nothing special, but it hits fast. The mace, which is used to destroy obstacles. The axes, which are useless except for cutting down trees. And when mashing the attack button, Kain will swing around with them. The flame sword, which is very powerful, but cannot put enemies into a stagger stage, meaning you cannot drain blood from them. And finally, the Soul Reaver.
Time fades even legend, and the origin of Soul Reaver has been lost long ago. But its purpose remains, to feed on the souls of any creature it strikes. Kindred, this blade and I.
You have no idea how accurate that is, Kain. It's the most powerful weapon in the game. I was even able to destroy a boss with a single hit. But it drains your magic, and when your magic meter is empty, you can't damage anything with it at all. Also, the Soul Reaver screeches when you swing it. Something that would prove most fortuitous. Each weapon is purely a matter of circumstance. I like to stick with the Iron Sword when trying to suck up blood. The only thing that makes switching between your weapons annoying is the very frequent load times. Yeah, this was a problem in the PS1 days. Kain is also assisted by items he can gather, such as the Heart of Darkness.
Reputed to have been ripped from the chest of the greatest vampire to have ever existed, Janos Audron, the Heart of Darkness restores vampiric unlife. Life is precious, Janos discovered, as it was torn, throbbing and bleeding from his own body.
Ah, written by the winners, but history is filled with liars. It can resurrect Kain from death, and it comes in handy quite a few times. Kain can also learn spells such as the ability to shoot lightning or mind control people, which are purely situational. I find the best ability is to use the repel spell while wearing the chaos armor, and nothing can hurt you. It completely breaks the game. Blood Omen often throws world building at you through Kain's narration, and it's refreshing. It's an interesting way to balance Kain as a character who the player experiences the game with, and as someone who has his own personality. Kain can also find these blood fountains, which will give Kain some new abilities such as strength, the ability to sustain rain and snow, all that would hurt a vampire. Kain can also transform into various forms. The lupine, which is great for traversing cliffs, the bat spell, which essentially allows Kain to fast travel across Nosgoth through these bat beacons, the disguise allows Kain to visit human towns without being attacked, but this gets upgraded with the noble disguise. The mist form allows Kain to step on water and anything that would hurt him without taking damage. Very useful. Here's the thing, this game really challenges the idea of heroes and villains. Are you the good guy or the bad guy when you're playing as Kain? Or are you both? But Blood Omen remembers most of all that it is a video game first and foremost. It is not an interactive movie that occasionally remembers that you're playing. Kain remembers to keep the player in control. The atmosphere and world bring Kain to life. But I've gone on enough about that already, it's time to cover the ending. Kain returns to the Pillars of Nosgoth, where Mortanius shows that he wanted Kain to destroy the Circle and embraces his death at the hands of Kain.
The Circle is to be destroyed. You have to die as well, Necromancer. I admire your cunning, but you will not escape your fate.
Nay, I will embrace it, but my death will leave one more to take, Princeling. Finish me!
Despite this, Mortanius still puts up a fight, but it's nothing you can't handle. But then he turns into the Dark Entity, the real murderer of Ariel. He was alluded to, so he doesn't come out of nowhere, but Kain renounces any subjugation.
The tragic hero. Play on, little vampire. Play on.
Fey Victus!
He really doesn't do much except teleport around the pillars, leaving Kain to just hack him away whenever he sees him. He can kill you if he touches you, but I had so many Heart of Darknesses it didn't matter by that point. Once he's down, Kain is faced with the decision that defines his whole existence.
I am the last pillar, the only survivor of the Circle of Nine. At my whim, the world will be healed or damned. At my whim.
Now this is where things come into play. The game gave you a choice. Is Kain a hero or is he a villain? Do you sacrifice yourself to save the world or do you rule it in its damnation? Well, for the sake of making sequels, only one ending could be canon.
Once I embraced my powers, I realized that Vorador was correct. We are gods. Dark gods. And it is our duty to thin the herd.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please hit that bell, like, and subscribe button. If you want updates, follow me on Twitter or join my Discord, which are provided in the description below. See you next time.